Hi, and welcome to our last session of the 2017-2018 school year. I'm Patrice Presco, and on behalf of the STEM Cooperative and the Next 10 Years Helping STEM Students Thrive team, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. Today's focus will be on reflection and next steps, and we planned a very interactive session today where we're hoping that you will come up on stage, share some of your reflections, those of you that attended one or more sessions, as well as things you learned that you might have already implemented in practice or are planning to, as well as your thoughts on topics or guest speakers that we might have moving forward. And we have some interactive discussion questions where we will get together in pairs to do a little bit of brainstorming on some of those topics. As a reminder, we have over 140 colleagues representing 56 institutions, 8 organizations, 4 countries, 1 territory, and from 25 states within the U.S. that have been a part of all of the sessions this school year. And I would like to thank Kathleen Murphy, who unfortunately was not able to join us today, but who has been with us at the other sessions and has been my partner throughout this process, as well as Becky Burke, who is on with us today. And feel free to click on her picture and chat with her and thank her for all the great work she's done in helping us to organize and promote these sessions. So in addition to sharing out knowledge, one of our goals, as we've mentioned previously, is really to build community and have a chance to share the great things that we're doing, discuss some of the challenges that we're having on our own campuses, and hopefully really learn from one another, take some ideas back to our campuses, and form a network and community that we can reach out to. I would like to especially thank Chris Downs and Shindig for allowing us to use this platform. I think that the opportunity to use this platform has really been beneficial in our ability to form some new relationships and build that community. So to begin with, Chris, if you could go to the next slide, please. Where we would really like to begin is at the beginning, to reflect upon some of your takeaways that you've had during the sessions. We started off with talking about innovation and different types of innovation that were going on at campuses. We then talked about institutional change, learning spaces, and introductory undergraduate courses. And so we would love to have somebody who is a participant today to come up on stage, and you can see where there's the join podium square. So if you simply click on that square, you can come up on the podium. You also have the option to raise your hand, and Chris can then bring you up. Or if you click on the question mark box, you can type in a question, which Chris will then bring up on stage. So I'm really hoping possibly Kathy or Letitia, I'm not sure if one of you would like to start us off by just coming up and sharing some reflections or takeaways on the session that you had, something you learned from some of the other speakers, or maybe something you learned at one of the other sessions that you attended. I see Anne Marie, you're here as well. Would you like to come up on stage and share a few reflections with us? It's just like being in school where you get called on. If you just want to click on the join podium, we'd love to hear from you. Just, some of your, I know that you shared with me a few times after the session some of your takeaways. It would be great if you could come up on stage and share with us.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for being brave and coming up on stage.
I don't think I did that. I think somebody else did that, but that's okay. Anyway, I think one of the things that has struck me through this whole thing and through some conferences I've gone to and stuff like that is that there doesn't seem to be any coherent, from kind of beginning to end plan. There are a lot of kind of, if we impact the pipeline here, this is what happens here. And if we impact it here, this is what happens here. But there's not necessarily a continuation, if that makes any sense, of the work. And I guess that's what I'm sort of thinking about being at Harvard, is to sort of how to put something in place now that we have a new president, that will really make a difference, not just sort of once or when a few people are in certain jobs,
Hmm.
but then when they leave that project, usually, but to put something in place that's more policy oriented, I guess.
Okay.
So
So
those are
have
my
you,
thoughts.
okay. Is there anything that at any of the sessions that you heard that other universities were doing or projects people were working on that maybe sparked some thoughts on how you might achieve that?
Well, last fall I went to a STEM conference in San Francisco, and both there and then here, when the dean of Cornell was speaking, I think it was last month, maybe, or
Hmm.
the month before. Anyway, it seems like a lot of it has to come top down
Hmm.
because there are so many people who are resistant to change that to put a policy in place and not have it enforced from top down won't help. Um, so that seemed to be important. Uh, and then just looking at how people teach is another really important piece. So I think those are the two.
Are there any successes you've had at Harvard or specific challenges or barriers that you feel like you face?
Um, I think there are several. I think um, one is that people who are underrepresented in STEM seem to have a hard time asking for help until it's too late.
Hmm.
And maybe that's all of us. I don't know. Um, but uh, it makes it harder to figure out where to intervene when people keep saying I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, or I don't need
Hmm.
this modified, or what have you. Um, as I said, I think we run into a lot of institutional issues, and the question is how to kind of overcome them so that there is more of a general policy. Um, it's interesting. I went to a social justice hackathon this weekend at MIT, and I wanted to see what it would be like. And there was a woman there whose name is escaping me, but I can send it to you, who really set out to try to take away the bias in hiring in uh,
Hmm.
STEM companies, high tech companies, and what have you. And she's actually figured out a pretty good method for doing that. Now, whether or not people will apply this, across the board, I don't know. But it was sort of similar to Iris Bonet's Whatever Works book,
Hmm.
where she took people and put them behind a screen when they were interviewing for jobs at the symphony, so no one could tell gender,
Oh,
race.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this woman was actually using computer modeling to basically challenge people and have them come up with solutions without anyone knowing what they looked like, where they came from, no resumes, and then challenging them for their interviews to actually do the work and not just either not interview well or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
so I sort of keep wondering where could we use more things like that, particularly in terms of hiring into academia. I could tell you right now, for instance, that the math department at Harvard is all white men and no women, no people of color.
Wow. Wow.
And so, how can you get past? How can you get past that?
Yeah, and that definitely feeds into the sense of belonging. I think that
Yes.
that's more and more research is supporting that sense of belonging is such an important part of persistence, and I think comfort level in reaching out and asking for help, like you're talking about, and and mentoring as well. And so seeing people
Well,
that have similar interests to you, care about the same things as you, is a really important aspect.
and I think that's one of the other issues, right? In academia, what I found recently meeting with a bunch of different student groups is that a lot of graduate students are asking for the mentoring, but
Hmm.
a lot of them aren't finding it in the university. They're having to go to corporations and whatnot to bring in mentors. And I'm not
Hmm.
sure why that is.
Yeah.
I think but I think people throw around mentoring a lot, but I think a lot of people don't know how to mentor. I mean, it's sort of a skill that yeah, and so that's another piece of this in sort of the whole pipeline thing. That if we're going to get more people into the university and sticking with STEM, then they have to be mentored in a positive way.
Yeah, that's a great point that like so many things we just try to like throw something in or add it on without really being thoughtful about it. And mentoring
Right.
could fall under that. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Do you have before you step down, do you have any thoughts on topics or speakers or ideas for our next session, for the next school year?
Um, Let me send them to you because
Okay.
I do have a couple of ideas. Yeah.
Okay.
So, all
All
right.
right, great.
Thanks.
All right, thanks so much. Okay, do we have any other takers to come up on stage? Kathy, would you like to come up and share with us? You can just click on the join podium and maybe share a few reflections on some of the sessions you attended. Okay. All right. So there's Kathy. Great. Thank you.
Hi,
Hi, Kathy.
and good
Thanks for
morning. Thank
joining
you.
us.
I wanted to answer the question you just asked about perhaps a future topic for engagement. And that would be to bring students to this, to hear their voices. Every time I think I know something or understand something, the minute I bring the students in the room and talk to them, I realize how valuable their perspective is and what I don't know. So that was my one suggestion.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. I know that we tried to market it a little bit to students, but maybe to specifically reach out to some student groups and work a little bit harder on that. I think you're right. To have that voice would be really important. Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking in response to what Anne Marie just said is she mentioned the need for a more holistic policy, I think. And I wanted to, first of all, echo that and say thank you for bringing that up. Not taking one piece of higher education at a time, but looking at them all. The part that I wanted to also bring up is that within any one piece, it's a system. And what I heard in the discussion I was part of, I was only part of one, was this person was focusing on students and this person was focusing on faculty. And you were just talking about, or Anne Marie was just talking about the community and how few faces of color there were, and perhaps how few women there were as well. That's a system. And what I mean by that is we've got faculty and students and curriculum and the wider community, and all these parts fit together. You can't take this part without that part. And to the extent that we can not only look across time in a policy, but also look at it holistically as a system with each part, that you tug on one part and this one over here moves. All of them need to be looked at. And I think I just wanted to say that as well. It's a friendly echo, I think, to what Anne Marie said.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought it up because I agree. I think that the whole educational ecosystem is a complex system. And you're right. If you make one intervention or nudge, it shifts everything in the system. And we really need to be taking a more holistic look and looking not just at the inside the classroom experiences, but outside the classroom as well. What's going on in the entire world of the student. Yeah.
Yeah, let me give you an example of, I want to call fixing students, realizing that that's not the language I would use or choose for a lot of reasons. Let's say that you have a program that intervenes in a science class and takes a group that was performing low and through a variety of interventions moves them up on the scale. Now, if the faculty member has a curve where this number of people have to fail or drop or get a D or an F, by moving one group here, you affect the new group that becomes here. And that's what I mean by if you intervene here, you need to intervene in the whole system, not just fix students, but fix the curriculum and fix the community and fix everything fixed isn't even the right word.
Yeah. Yes.
Engage people to find structures that work better for everybody.
Yeah, no,
That's why I'm
that's
with fix. Fix isn't the right word. You don't fix students. You don't fix the curriculum, and you don't fix the culture. You shift it in complex and nuanced ways to benefit all with a sense of
yeah.
justice and equity and inclusion. And that's my getting rid of the word fix.
Yeah, I like to think of it as shifting it so there's more stories of students thriving.
Yeah. And more faculties thriving and a more robust community and a curriculum that reflects our world and our planet that our students are going into.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully these sessions can be a small step forward in doing that. And that actually leads in really well to what we want to talk about next, which is doing a little bit of brainstorming about how we might take some small steps to begin to shift some stories and move the needle just a little bit. So Chris, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we're gonna do what I like to call a very quick design thinking sprint. And for those of you that are not familiar with design thinking, the goal of it is to really gain empathy for your user. And as Kathy mentioned, the student voice is especially important when we talk about a lot of these things. And in order to gain empathy, what's important is really listening for the story, taking the time to talk with whomever your user is, and really learning, what do they care about, what do they value, what's important to them, and what are their challenges. And once you have an understanding of that, you can gain an understanding of what their point of view is, and then you move into the ideate stage, which is really a brainstorming stage where you come up with some different possible big grand ideas or solutions, and then prototype and test. So for today, we'd really like to stay in the empathize and define stage. And in order to do that, what I wanted to do was to have each of you pair up into groups of 2, where you're going to just take a few minutes to essentially interview one another. And Chris, if you could go on to the next slide. I love this slide because it shows how something was designed and what the user experience is. And in looking at it, we see that, whomever did this design really did not take the time to understand how the user experiences things and the path that they follow. And so in order to do that, we're going to just, as I said, take a little bit of time to talk with one another today and try to get an understanding of what some of the challenges and barriers and values each of us have. And in order to share and collate that, if you look in the bottom left hand of your screen, you'll see a widget that says working document. And I created a Google Doc where each team can share some of their takeaways of these discussions. And it also has a space if you want to share any information, again, on feedback or guests or topics for our next session. So if each of you could click on the widget that says working document, that should open up the Google Doc for you in another window. And then Chris, if you could go to the next slide. And then the next slide. Great. So what I would like you to do, and in order to pair up with somebody, again, all you have to do is click on their picture, and then you'll be connected. You can have a conversation together. And the three questions that I pose to you are: what is one thing you are doing that you don't think you should be doing? What is one thing you are not doing that you think you should be doing? And why are you not doing what you think you should be doing? And the goal of these questions is to think about these questions within the framework of the topics that we talked about and the goal of helping STEM students thrive and having more stories of thriving students and communities. So what I would like everyone to do next is we're going to give you, it should essentially work as an interview, so you can take The first person will take 3 minutes to interview their partner, and then you'll switch, and that person will interview them for 3 minutes, and then we will come back to share some of your takeaways. So what I would like you to do now, if you haven't already, is to open up the Google Doc and then click on a person that you would like to chat with. Okay, well, I hope everyone had a good discussion, and what I didn't mention was I had just put on that document team 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you could really have picked any team number that was just a space for people to share some of their comments in case, you know, other people wanted to see what some of the other discussions were that was going on. So Chris, if you could go to the next slide. So the next step in the design thinking process in order to gain empathy after an interview like that, I like to refer to it as unpacking your findings and telling the juicy bits. And that really involves thinking about what were some of the needs of that person. And in that case, we're not designing solutions yet. We're really thinking about verbs. You know, what do they need? Were there things they said that surprised you, areas where you thought there were tensions or conflicts? And ultimately, what were your insights or hunches? And so what I would ask each of you to do at this point is take about 2 minutes to reflect on the interview that you had with that person, and just think a little bit about some of these questions, and then we'll come back and ideally have some of you come up on stage and share a little bit about your interview and what some of your findings were. So right now, if you could just take about 2 minutes to reflect on the interview that you had, and then I'll come back to bring some people up on stage to share. Okay, so I hope that was enough time to at least begin to think about some of these things. And I'm wondering if we have a volunteer to come up on stage. Either you can raise your hand and Chris will bring you up, or if we have the click your podium icon up, you can just click on that. And I'm wondering if maybe Robin Sullivan, if you might like to come up and share a little bit about your experience with the interview and what some of your findings were. All right. It doesn't look like we have any. Becky, how about, would you like to come up and share a little bit about your experience? I can have Chris bring you up on stage. Hi, Robin. It looks like your camera's not on, but I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your interview and some of your findings.
Yeah, I will just share real quick. As often is the case when I join these sessions, I'm trying to multitask. So it's kind of why I had the camera off. But it was very good to talk with Susan, who shared her vantage point from being a consultant in this area. And just that we talked a little bit about how some strategies of what we've done in order to maybe, I try to be more conscious of reverse bias and making judgments before I hear from someone that they might, have some particular ways of believing that women in STEM are not as capable. So I have to kind of tone back what I'm, my initial judgments. And also I shared an insight from someone in our group who's always saying, if we can do just one thing for the day, just one minor, bringing somebody else's awareness up a hair, then that will be just a few more steps towards the right direction.
Okay. Was there anything that surprised you, or any areas where you saw tensions or conflicts?
Nothing that came up in our conversations, no.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us up on stage.
And one thing that's is I love the way that this group tries to bring forward the interactivity into these sessions. Too bad our attention always isn't able to be as interactive as the sessions would call for. So thanks for organizing these. See ya.
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks, Robin. Kathy Middlecamp, would you like to come up next and join us and share a little bit about your interview and your findings? Kathy, you can just click on the join podium button, or I can have Chris bring you up. Oh, there you go. Hi, thanks for joining us again.
You're welcome. And Becky was my partner, and Latricia came on a bit later, but until we got the mics figured out, there were only two of us. So I think in essence, I'm reporting from me and Becky from the earlier conversation. We entered into the Google Docs two things that we thought we shouldn't be doing that we were doing. Becky mentioned that we were trying to, again, fix the students instead of the system, and perhaps that meant we were thinking too small. And the other thing I mentioned that we were doing that I didn't think we should be doing was adding over the years more and more and more stuff into the science curriculum, my experiences with the chemistry curriculum, and not taking anything out while we were putting other things in. So those were the two things we mentioned on the first question, and I could speedily answer what we said on the second one. Becky mentioned that if we are looking at too small a part of the system, I think other voices said earlier, to engage the top layer of the university environment, to look at what's going on as a system, not just one piece at a time. And what I said, actually very predictably for me, is in terms of stuffing more sense in the curriculum, I don't want to cover more. I want to uncover more. And what I mean by that is adding rich, real-world context to what we have so that the curriculum, the science curriculum, the chemistry curriculum, connects to real-world issues, challenging problems, wicked problems, and local communities as well as global communities. So in essence, to make the science really worth learning in the very first course. That would be it.
Yeah. And I love that idea. I think that so much research supports that when the students have a goal in mind that's meaningful to them and aligns with things that they're passionate about, of course, they're more likely to persist. And what better way than to help them make those connections and see that alignment than incorporating it into the curriculum.
Right.
So was there anything in your discussions that surprised you or areas where you saw tensions or conflicts?
We actually didn't get to that question together while we were trying to get a microphone to work. But I think the one part that both Becky and I let out a gasp of something is, why are we not doing it? And we both said, let me count the ways. We could make a long answer to that. So I think that's where you heard the gasp from both of us. Don't get us started or we might talk forever.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing. And Letitia, I'm wondering if you'd like to come up since your microphone, I know your microphone was not working and you didn't have a chance maybe to interact as much as you'd like. I'd love to have you come up and maybe share a little bit of your insights into those questions with the group. And you can just click on the join podium button or Chris can bring you up. All right. Well, while we're waiting, there she is.
Okay. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So the first question of what we are not doing, I really couldn't, I too was stumped by that. I'm sure there is something that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing. I couldn't think of it. The one thing that I wish we could do more of is really work with students on the sort of the science of learning or the mechanisms by which they learn math and science. I know there's a ton of research in this area. We do have some folks that are working on that, but I really would like to work, especially with our science ed department over in the Graduate School of Education. I really would like to work with them more on sort of the science of learning or the process by which students learn STEM, especially in math. Math, of course, I think is the keystone and the cornerstone of everything else that the students are going to do. So I think it would really be cool if we could work with students on optimizing their learning, especially in math. And there's so much information out there, and there's so much research out there, and I just wish that I had the time to solely work on that. But I'm doing a lot of kind of everyday managing of students and programs and opportunities that I don't really get to do as much of that kind of stuff as I would like.
Mm-hmm. So that may be the answer to my next, the next question, which is why are you not doing that? It sounds like time might be the biggest barrier for you.
Definitely. Just trying to, we're working now on getting acceptances out to our summer program, and our summer program has a lot of moving parts. So we always start in January working on that, and then we have them for 12 weeks during this, 10 weeks during the summer. And then, the other thing that I'm doing is trying to work with our School of Engineering to recruit more diverse faculty, and that we have a lot of trainings. We do search committee training. We're trying to optimize our postings, trying to get them out to a wider audience and cast a wider net. So that's taking a lot of time as well. So, we try to do a good balance of working on the student piece and the faculty staff piece. But there are always things that go wanting. So we tend to be able to work well with the students that have kind of gotten it and are doing well. But really, I want to get to the band of students who really need the extra help. And we in Fits and Starts tried to put some math groups together, and we just never really got to the space that we wanted to get to with those.
Now, are there any, I'm entering the brainstorming part. Are there any possibilities to work with faculty in the graduate program where they might be able to incorporate a project into one of their classes where the students maybe have to come up with, analyze something for you or come up with a solution for you, as like that could become an assignment in the class?
That is a possibility. And someone had pointed out to me, I can't remember the phrase, but someone was talking to me about sort of the science of learning and the process by which students take information and process it and are able to think critically and then give it back, not just spitting back random facts, but actually taking information and processing it in a way that they can use it critically in other courses, and math certainly would be one of those things. And I was talking with someone about that, and they were, talking about the different research that was out there. And I had, put a thought in my head saying, oh, I really need to talk with someone in the Graduate School of Education and Science Ed about this, because I'm sure someone over there is researching that. And this was a few weeks ago, and it's still in the back of my head to do that, and to try to find a partner. It seems like also a great grant opportunity to maybe get some funds to put some different things in place. And so that's been kind of rolling around in my head for the past couple of weeks.
Well, maybe there's somebody here that might like to collaborate on a grant submission, or has some grad students or somebody who might like to help you with this project. I know grant submissions as well take a lot of time to write up, right?
Yes, I did. That's another thing. I was working on a grant in the fall, and that took up most of the fall semester.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm glad you got your microphone working, and thanks for coming up and sharing with us.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share a little bit of Anne Marie and I chatted when we did the interview, and the item that Anne Marie talked about was the collection of data and just getting a deeper understanding of the faculty and student experience. And really looking at things like one of the examples she shared was looking at how many graduate students who come in to work in the labs, then what do they do after graduation? Do they stay in that field, or do they go off and do something else? And I'm sure many of you can relate to this when I asked her why they might not be doing what they think they should be doing. She talked a little bit about, a lack of cross-pollination and sharing of information across campus and across colleges, and that, it would be really nice if students had a very positive experience in those gateway courses, for example, before they got into the School of Engineering. So again, I think that goes back to what Kathy was talking about, and really just taking a holistic view of the student experience and really looking at it as a system and what are all those pieces in the system, and making sure that we're not missing anything. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this session. And Robin, thanks for mentioning that you really appreciated the interactivity from our first session to the last. Becky and I and Kathleen have done a lot of brainstorming about how we can get more people to come up on stage and interact in pairs, again, because one of our outcomes really is just to help you develop some relationships and build community. And with that in mind, since this is the last session before we start up again in the fall, one of the things I would love is if we continued to work a little bit in this Google Doc and to continue to do some brainstorming and thinking about possible solutions. And so what I will do is just add a little bit more information to guide you through the prototype process of thinking up solutions. And as time permits, if you have time to join in and share a little bit more in there, that would be great. And keep your eyes out for additional information on upcoming events when we get started again. And I'd also like to remind you again to share on this doc any ideas you have for future sessions, topics, maybe an activity that you think that we could try to make it a little interactive and get people talking in pairs or small groups would be great. We are always open to suggestions. And we would just really like to thank you for joining us. And another thank you to all of our guests who took the time to talk with us and prepare and share what they're doing. And to Shindig again for allowing us to use the platform. And if anyone has, I'll stay here for a little while. If anyone has any last minute comments that they would like to share, or if anyone wants to take that last opportunity to jump up on stage and share one last little thing, you're welcome to do that. And if you do want to share anything on Twitter, or if you're writing a blog post or anything, we would ask you to use the hashtag STEM Students Thrive. And thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to next time.